people that has been kicked out of every place we've ever lived for 2,000 years. Every single place.
Usury is illegal. So in Christian nations, lending money for an interest rate was illegal. So because it was illegal for the Christians, who did the lending? The Jews. So there was Christians who could lend for 0% or didn't lend at all. And then these people called the Jews would come over and start lending money. They would start charging money. And in a couple generations, guess what would happen to the economy? The Jews owned everything. And then guess what the king did? Rounded them up and threw them out of the country. Then they go to the next country, and what would they do? Same thing. And what would that king do? Round them up, kick them out of the country. This went on for thousands of years. This is why the Jews in history have had no country. Because the king would have, they would say no usury, no money lending, and they would start the money lending, they would start the central bank to compete with the king would kick them out. They go to the next country, do it again. So this has happened over and over and over again because this quote right here from Napoleon, he would show the compound interest tables, and he said in a very short amount of time, compound interest would eat up every piece of property in France. In fact, I'm going to show you how powerful compound interest is. Very scary thing, and there's a reason why it was illegal.
So there are two sides to this coin. So first you have this guy this Jewish guy, and I'll probably get demonetized for this video, who is a Jewish guy who is sitting up here talking about how they got kicked out of every country, and he's playing on people's emotions as if they were just doing their thing, being peaceful and humble and wasn't bothering anybody, and then they just got kicked out because people just hated them so very much just for them being who they are. And then you got the other guys who's explaining why they got kicked out. It was purely economics. In the same way that the Knights Templars were destroyed because they had became the biggest bank in Europe at the time, and the King of France was like, I owe them too much money, so let me get the Pope on my side so we can get rid of them because I don't want to pay my debts. The same thing happened to the Jewish people as they moved throughout Europe. They became the biggest money lenders, the biggest banks, and so the kings and the people went against them because they were protecting their own property and their own economics. I understand both sides of that coin. You got kicked out because your ancestors were controlling the finances and the money. Still doing it, but just in a different way that people don't even recognize it through the Federal Reserve and the centralized banks. But hey, it is what it is. Now, as far as am I mad at the Jewish people for doing it? No, I'm not. Because many cultures actually teach the same thing. The Ethiopian culture is really good at doing this very thing. Because what their Bible says, and one of the most revealing scriptures that they follow, says that it's okay for them to do it. Deuteronomy 23:20 says, unto the stranger thou mayest lend upon usury, but unto thy brother thou shalt not lend upon usury. That is the Lord, all capitals, thy God, that the Lord thy God may bless thee in all that thou settlest thine hand to in the land whither thou goest to possess it. So no matter what land that they go into, they can go in and possess it, and they can possess it through the use of usury upon strangers. But for their own people, they're not supposed to charge usury, which is interest. So for those who don't know, it's interest. I've known many Ethiopian guys who have been able to buy houses, build businesses because they lend from Ethiopian banks or Ethiopian family members or friends or organizations, and they never have to pay interest. So when they borrow $200,000 to buy a house, they pay back the $200,000. But when it comes to somebody outside, they will charge interest. I actually had a brother who was a Hebrew Israelite, and because he believed that all black people are Hebrew Israelites, when he offered me a loan and we worked out a schedule, I was like, where's the interest? And he was like, I can't charge you interest, because he looked upon me as a Hebrew Israelite. And even when I told him I'm not, he still just wouldn't do it, right? Now, if it was somebody else, and he told me if it was a white guy, he would charge him interest. So this is something that they have picked up from their Bible, that their God teaches them, but it doesn't always work in their favor as it did throughout Europe, which is why they were kicked out over and over again. And if you go to Israel today, you will find a similar situation where to another Israelite who looks like them, because they've broken it down into race now, they won't charge interest. But to a Israelite, a person who lives in Israel, who is not like them, they will charge them interest. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, how much better would this world be if nobody charged anybody interest? And people were able to buy a house for $200,000, pay it back. But it's a capitalistic world. You got to make money somehow if you're going to be a bank. And this is how they make their money, is through usury. So you can take that for however you want to take it. I just found it to be interesting information to share. So y'all have a great day. Remember always, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibration.